Good morning, everyone. How's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be covering apps in ChatGPT and the new Apps SDK. Essentially, we're just going to demystify what it actually is and why it is so important. So it was released just yesterday by OpenAI, and they actually made a lot of announcements yesterday. We're going to be covering all of them in the next few videos during the week. So make sure to subscribe to actually don't miss those ones. And today, we're going to be covering why it is so important, how it works behind the scenes, how this new protocol uses the MCP protocol behind the scenes to actually make everything work, and how this is most likely going to become the new standard for applications in AI assistants. I am also going to be making a tutorial about how to create an app for ChatGPT in the coming week, so make sure to subscribe to actually don't miss that one. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So first of all, what are ChatGPT apps? And it's very straightforward. I'm going to show you in just a moment. Essentially, these are just applications that can be called from within your chat window in ChatGPT. So you just mention the application that you want, as you see right here. You ask what you want the application to do, and then the application starts doing what you want it. And at the same time, it opens up a small little user interface for you to see what's actually going on. They have a nice user design system so that you can actually imitate this design when you're creating your own applications. But this is essentially what it's going to be doing. And there are a lot of applications available. There is booking.com, which allows you to book hotels, etc. There is Canva, which allows you to create presentations, Coursera, Expedia to check travels, Figma, Spotify, Zillow to search for real estate, etc. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be testing one of this in ChatGPT to show you exactly how it works behind, in real time. So let's take a look at that. All right, so let's show you in real time what a ChatGPT app looks like. And what you're going to want to do is, first of all, go to ChatGPT. And there are several ways in which you can install applications. The first one is you go to settings right here. Go to apps and connectors, and you connect whichever application you want from the ones that are right here. In the future, they are going to release an actual catalog of applications available. But for now, since there are only 6 available, they're right here. And in my case, I'm going to be showing this with Spotify. Now, I could sign up and I could connect and sign in clicking on connect right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to connect from within the chat window. Because what ChatGPT does is that whenever you ask something, whenever it identifies that it can use an application to perform that action, it can suggest that application. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to ask it to create a playlist for me that blends my personal taste in French music. Let's send it. And ideally, if I think if I'm correct, it will suggest Spotify right here. So I'm going to click right here on use Spotify for this answer. I'm not sure if it actually knows my taste in French music, but let's click right here. And there we go. Now it wants to connect to Spotify. That happens the first time you invoke an application. It asks you to connect to it. So I'm going to click right here on connect. You're in control. Here you have like the specifications of what the data is going to be sent, what data is going to be sent. Here I have to click on agree. And now I should be able to see my playlist. So let's take a look at it. And there you go. As you can see, it has a nice little user interface right here for you to actually take a look at what is going on. And there's a design system for this. So if you want to create your own ChatGPT applications, you're going to have to follow the design system that they have implemented. And here you can see that we have Daft Punk, we have Tao Mon Amour. All right, I don't really know Tao Mon Amour, but there you go. There you go. That's how Spotify thought that I would like French music. So let's just open it on Spotify. I can open this on Spotify app. And there we go. Here is my blend of French music, and the playlist is created. And basically you can do pretty much the same thing with any application that is connected right here. It has its nice little interface right here. Now, what we're going to see right now is how this actually works behind the scenes and how it uses MCP behind the scenes to actually turn this into a potential standard for AI assistant applications. All right, so now let's take a look at the blog post right here, especially for developers. And they have released an Apps SDK that allows you to create these applications that we just saw. And I'm going to show you in a later video the actual tutorial of how to create these applications for developers. Building with this new Apps SDK makes it possible to reach over 800 million ChatGPT users at just the right time. Apps will be available today to all logged in ChatGPT users outside the EU, sadly, on free Go Plus and Pro plans. So you can already start using it as I just showed you. There will be more pilot partners launching later this year with applications launching into ChatGPT as well. And you can already start building and testing applications today with the Apps SDK preview, which they're releasing as an open standard built on top of the Model Context Protocol, which is excellent news. Now, if you don't know what the MCP protocol is, you can either take a look at this crash course that I have right here. There's a video about it I have on YouTube. If you want a full course about MCP, I have one right in my community, which you can join for free, clicking the link in the description. Now, they also say how to use apps in ChatGPT. Here's very straightforward. I just show you how to do it actually. And there are, as I showed you, a few apps available today, only 6 or 7 so far, but they will be adding more. And they will be accepting your applications very soon as well. These are the ones that are coming up soon, and the ones that you build are going to be added to this new repository of applications that they're going to make available. So how do you build these applications? So as I mentioned before, the Apps SDK extends MCP so developers can design both the logic and the interface of their applications. They have made the Apps SDK open source so that apps built with it can run anywhere that adopts this standard, kind of following the same philosophy of MCP. The goal with today's preview is to get these tools into developers' hands, gather feedback, and build this new generation of applications together. This kind of feels like the start of a new app store that has huge business potential, if you ask me. So I'm very excited about it. And then let's say what is next? They say that later this year, they will launch ChatGPT Apps. And what is next? They say that later this year, they will launch apps to ChatGPT Business, Enterprise, and EDU. They will also open submissions so developers can publish their applications in ChatGPT, which is not open yet, but is coming up soon, and launch a dedicated directory where users can browse and search for them, which is what I told you before. Apps that meet the standards provided in our developer guidelines will be eligible to be listed, and those that meet higher design and functionality standards may be featured more prominently, both in the directory and in conversations. We will also share details on monetization soon, including supports for the new Agentic Commerce Protocol, which I'm going to mention later in a future video, and open standard that enables instant checkout in ChatGPT. This is just the start of applications in ChatGPT, bringing new utility to users and new opportunities to developers. All right, so now let's take a look at how the Apps SDK works. We're not going to be building an actual ChatGPT app right here. We're going to just show you how this works at a very high level so that in the next video, we can actually start building our own ChatGPT app. So when you go to the Apps SDK page, you see that they have 3 phases for developing your application. First of all, they have decided that the first part is going to be a planning stage where you're going to decide whether or not your application is actually viable as a ChatGPT app, because not every single application is useful as a ChatGPT app. But there you go. You have this planning stage to refine the use cases, define the tools that your agent is going to be able to use to actually interact with your application, and design the components, because you're going to be also building UI components, as I told you before. This is kind of the addition on top of the MCP protocol. You now have also a user interface that appears in an iframe within your chat window, as I showed you before. So this is going to be the planning stage. After that, you're going to actually start building, and building is actually just building a real MCP server, just like any other that we have been building right here. So you're going to build your own MCP server. You're going to deploy it afterwards. And you're also going to create your own custom user interface. And in order to do that, they have created a window.openai API. So you can tap into this API to actually get information about the tools that are being used, the tools that are available, anything related to the relationship between the tools and your agent in real time, so that you can use that information in your component, in your user interface component. So there you go. That is the part that you have right here. The authentication is going to go just as we saw before, using OAuth 2.1 in the regular official MCP authorization spec. So OAuth 2.1 is still going to be the standard. That does not change from MCP. I actually have a video about how to set up MCP, OAuth for MCP, and you can check it out right here on top. And there you go. After that, they also tell you how you can deploy this. Something that I wanted to show you before is that when you set up your server, you're going to be able to run it locally. So even though ChatGPT is still not accepting submissions from third-party applications, you can indeed create your own MCP ChatGPT application and run it locally in your computer. So far, it's still kind of in developer beta, but you can see how powerful this is going to be now that you're going to be able to actually share it with other people and other users of ChatGPT. And since this is going to be an open source standard, you're going to be able to use these applications with pretty much any other AI assistant that accepts this standard, which I have a feeling that a lot of AI assistants are going to be implementing this. All right, so now let's take a look at some examples right here. And right here, what we're going to see is some MCP servers that are actually adapted to also be ChatGPT applications. Now, remember that if you don't know what an MCP server is, you can take a look at this other video in the description, or actually make the actual course about MCP servers, which is going to be pretty useful for this. Now, first things first, an MCP, here we have the MCP source code, and let's take a look at one of the tools that they have right here. Now, if you remember correctly, an MCP tool can essentially return any kind of data that you want. It can return bare text, it can return a JSON, it can return an array, it can return basically anything you want. Now, that is pretty cool, but what this new standard from OpenAI suggests is that now we're going to actually return as defined schema. And this schema has a meta tag, which is the metadata, which includes the HTML template for the user interface that is going to be shown to the user in the chat window. And it's going to have also some other messages for the user right here to improve the user experience, other than the actual contents of the response. Okay. So this is how you're going to be working with, and you're of course going to be able to click the user interface to interact with it, and that's going to happen through the window.openai API that I showed you right here before. We're going to be building one of these later in a future video. And then for deployment, of course, it's going to be essentially the same thing as for an MCP server. You're going to have your own backend. You're not going to be hosting this on ChatGPT. So you have your own backend, you connect through it, you authenticate with it, and essentially it works just like a remote MCP server with a nice graphical user interface that is sent via metadata. So there you go. That is essentially how the SDK works. So there you go. Don't forget that you can take a look at the free community that's right there in the description. You can DM me right there and ask me your questions. You can also access the community of all the amazing people that are already there. And if you choose to, you can also access the premium courses about MCP servers and full stack AI engineering that are also available right there, and ask your questions right there in the community if you have any. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.